Hello, my name is David Giles of Hitex UK Ltd, and this is a short presentation on the MDK-ARM toolchain from Keil. In this particular module we'll be discussing the configuration wizard utility which is present within Keil Microvision. I've created a basic project here which contains very little inside it at the moment. I've got some startup code, a system configuration utility, a main block of code, main.c, and a partly completed C file called sunbed configuration.c. And what we're going to do is explore the configuration utility that's present within Keil Microvision. It's provided as a feature to allow you to configure certain registers and I/O pins, etc. Some of these are provided for us already by Keil, so when we create a new project, a lot of the configuration utilities are already done for us. So if I open up system LPC 17xx.c, you can see here we have the C source code which has been authored by NXP for support of the controller. But you'll notice in addition to the C source tab, we actually have two tabs at the bottom, one of which is labelled text editor, the other one of which is labelled configuration wizard. If I open the configuration wizard tab, you'll notice that there's a lot of little tick boxes and options which we can select for the processor. So for example, if we want to configure the clock, we can tick this particular checkbox here, which then enables the rest of the menus which are contained within it. So for example, PLL Node configuration register has a multiplier section and a divider section, and there are a whole range of different numbers which we can enter to configure that particular utility. These are generally provided either by ARM or by the manufacturer, but as you can see, it's a very useful utility for us to be able to configure a peripheral. The feature that is being used within Keil Microvision to allow us to do this is what's called a configuration wizard, and there's a scripting language which is understood by Keil Microvision which allows us to display the information in this format. So for example, in our particular application, the user application, it may well be that we want to make use of some of these little tick menus and configuration options to allow us to set up our application. And to help us do this, there is a configuration scripting language, and this presentation really describes how to use this. If we come down into the text editor box, you'll notice that there are certain items contained within here. For example, use configuration wizard in context menu, plus what appears to be a whole range of commented out code which include almost like HTML style statements. Here for example, we've got an E encapsulated within a less than and greater than symbol, and similarly we have a H and an end H which is for the header. Now even though this is commented out, it is actually used by the configuration wizard scripting language to build up this kind of user-friendly interface to all of the different options which we have. So what I plan to do in this session is describe how you in your user application can make use of this scripting language to help configure and set up your project in the way in which you want it to do. Okay, so let's have a look at what it is that we're trying to achieve within our application. Let's assume that we have a product which is relatively easy to understand, something like a sunbed. There are two types of sunbed. There's a vertical sunbed where you actually stand and you're surrounded by ultraviolet tubes, and there's the other type of sunbed which is a horizontal sunbed where you actually lie on a bed and you're radiated from the top via a top canopy. In this particular application we would have, for example, a body fan which is used to keep the body cool whilst it's being irradiated. We'd possibly have a face fan which would allow us to keep the face at a slightly different temperature to the body. On a horizontal sunbed we may have, for example, a motorized canopy which is driven by an actuator, and there's an optional voice messaging system within the whole application, and obviously we've got lots of different options. So is there a voice messaging system present or not present? If it is present, do we want voice message to start the start of a session, for example? And the other thing is that we may have more than one message, so it may well be that we want a session to start on a particular message number. On a high spec option, it may well be on a horizontal sunbed, for example, that there's a vibrating mattress. If there is a vibrating mattress, do we want that mattress to start vibrating at the session startup? And also there may be some different options. There may well be vibrating mattress with between 1 and 5 motors in there. So as part of our system configuration, we would need to be able to decide which of these options are present within a system. So when we compile and build the application, we kind of have all this data available to us. Now, if you're a software engineer, it may well be that you would have configured all of this with a group of hash defines, or you may well have built a structure and have all these options within a structure. It could well be that they're stored in serial E squared and they're accessed from E squared during power up, for example. What we're going to do today is just basically try and create a configuration wizard for this particular slice of code. So you can see, for example, I've described all the different bits. So bit 0 for us is going to determine whether the bed is a horizontal bed or whether it's a vertical bed. We're going to use bit 1 within our variable, or our hash define if you like, to determine whether a body fan is present or not. And the other option for the body fan is that whether we want that fan to run at the start of a tanning session. So we got bit 0 horizontal or vertical. Bit 1s and bit 2 relate to the body fan, and similarly to the body fan we have something called a face fan, and we're going to use bits 3 and 4 to represent that. Bit 5 is actually going to be the simplest of all the options because it's either present or not present. And so what we'll do is we'll start with this particular one and we'll have a simple checkbox for this. So bit 5 represents whether the canopy is present or not. So I'll come back to that in a minute. Bit 6, do we have a voice messaging system present or not? So maybe kind of what I would like here is a little tick box that enables the other options below. So for example, if it is present, I want to be able to decide whether I want it to play a startup message at the beginning of a tanning session or not. And similarly, I want to be able to select the message which it will play. So I may have a library of either music or advertising messages, and I need to decide which one that is. And I'll make that an 8-bit value, so bits 8 to 15 will represent the message number. Similarly, for the vibrating mattress, it's either present or not present, so I'll have a tick box option for that. And this, of course, if it is present, I want it then to enable some more options. So again, is it running at the start of a session or not running, and so forth. Okay, so now we're going to attempt to use the scripting language. What we're ultimately looking to do is to try and modify this hash define. I have a hash define sunbed configuration, and it's currently set to 0x followed by 8 zeros, so it's a 32-bit unsigned number, and each of these bits going to represent a configuration within there. In this particular example, we're just trying to load the configuration value into a hash define, but we could also use it to load numbers into structures or global variables. So what we have to do to start with is first of all put some basic headers in to say that we're going to attempt to use the scripting language, and this starts with a double backslash, or rather a double forward slash against the margin, and this text string use a configuration wizard in context menu. So to actually find what this key command is, we can actually find that through the books template. So if we go into books and then select on complete user guide information and double click on it, then we go into MicroVision user guide, utilities, and then configuration wizard, and this kind of describes which we need to do. So what you can do is you can come into here, and obviously you can highlight the example which is given and do a Control C and Control V. It has to start with this particular text string, which is a key to the compiler to say you are actually going to be using the scripting language, and you also have to terminate it with this text string as well, which is end of configuration section. So if you are planning to use the configuration wizard, then you can open up the helps menu, and you can cut and paste some of the example code which they've got in there. So here, for example, I've basically got the header at the start, which is use configuration wizard in context menu, and the termination string which is at the bottom there as well. For us, we're going to have a header for this particular configuration block, which again is denoted with this less than symbol, then a H followed by the greater than symbol. A bit like HTML really, and similarly the end of a header block or a configuration block is also denoted by this. So if I click on save and press the compile icon, then I can come down into the configuration wizard tab, and basically you can see this is kind of what we have in here. So obviously there's no options currently below the sunbed configuration word, which I've kind of described in here, and that means when I come into the tab there's obviously no options effectively to select. The language is built up with a whole range of different items. We've got H's for header. We're going to be using the Q and the /Q for a tick box. So for bit 5, for example, I can describe that as Q followed by a number. Now this number is very important because this tells the scripting language which number which follows the block of code is actually going to be used. So if I use the number 0, then what that means is it's going to look for the first item within the list. So this could be a global variable, could be a whole range of other variables. So there could be 3 or 4 items, 3 or 4 hash defines or global variables and so forth below here. And what this naught does is it says that on the first instance that it finds a literal value, it will actually modify that value. So Q0 means Q means tick box, naught means the first element that we come across. Then I specify a bit position. In this case it's going to be 5. So Q0.5 means that bit 5 of this string here is actually going to be amended. Then I have to follow it with the greater than symbol, and then followed by a string. So what I'll type in here is motorized canopy present colon, and that will actually come up next to the tick box. So we'll have motorized canopy present and then a little tick box, and I can either select that or not select it. If it's selected, bit 5 within this hash define is set to a 1, and if it's not selected, it's actually set to a 0. So I click on save again, and build rather, which actually does the save for me. Then I come into configuration wizard, then I can open up the box, and hey presto, the one option which is specified below the header with the less than Q greater than symbol as now appears in here. So I now have motorized canopy present, and I can choose to select this box or not select this box. So if I actually select the box now and I'll press on a compile, the scripting language is interpreted, and that's substituted back into the text string, which I can now view from the text editors tab. So if I click on the text editor tab, you'll see now bit 5 within this hash define has actually been set for us. So 20 is bit 5 within that text string. So that's as easy as it gets really with the first option, which is the tick box. So having done the first one now, which is the tick box, we'll go back and fill in some of the more interesting ones. So let's take a look at the first bit that we were looking to set up to determine the type of bed. Here we've got bit 0, 0 would represent horizontal and 1 would represent vertical. So we could have another tick box here which would suggest is bed horizontal question mark, and you either tick it or not. However, I think this one would be better described by having a little pop down menu which allows me to describe whether the bed is a horizontal or vertical bed. This is relatively easy to do. So we come down to where we was before, and now we need to put some items in for the first menu option. So what we would use here is we would use the O for option. So here we're going to have a pop down list, and to describe one is very similar to the tick box, but instead of using the letter Q we use the letter O. And again, the number that immediately follows the letter O, in this case the 0, indicates that it's going to update the first literal value that it can find in the code below. And similarly we have the dot to represent a bit, and in this case 0 is going to be bit 0. So we have a text string which follows the option indicator. In this case it's sunbed type colon vertical or horizontal select. And what this does is it will actually print this text string for us next to the options. The options that will follow will have a 0 to be equal to a horizontal sunbed, and we'll have a 1 to be equal to a vertical sunbed. So the customer will have two pop-down options, one of which will be horizontal sumbed and the other which will be vertical sumbed, and the little scripting language will substitute the number 0 for horizontal, and it will substitute the 1 for vertical in position 0 of the first literal string that it can find after the end of the configuration section, which will effectively be bit 0 within this string. So again, I kind of click on the build, just make sure everything's okay, and then come into configuration wizard, then I click on the plus icon and the menu option opens. So now we have sunbed type : vertical or horizontal select, which was the text string which I entered immediately after the less than and greater than identifier, and here we have the two options which are present for us, horizontal or vertical. So if I select vertical, we should now have a 1 in bit position 0, and if I click on the build icon and then come back into the text editor, you'll notice now that the 0 has been replaced by a 1. Okay, so we've seen the Q option now, and we've seen the O option for both a checkbox and also for a menu selected option. If we want to have a conditional header, i.e. a tick box which allows us to enable other options, we have to use a slightly different syntax or a slightly different option. In this case, we're using the E option, which is effectively an enabled header. So here again, E means that we have checkbox. The text string that's associated with the text box is body fan present. Colon. If we put a tick within that checkbox, then that will enable us to select the other options which are detailed below. Now in this particular case, an E option has to be terminated with a backslash E or a /E option. As this text string here is now going to be for the body fan, you can see that we'll have one menu option tick box which will enable the options below it. In this case, the O is a selection for the body fan running at session startup, and we have either a 0 or a 1 for the option a body fan not running at session start, or a 1 for body fan running at session start. If I click on save and then do a quick build and come into the configuration wizard, as you can see when I open this up, I now have a little tick box here which represents the body fan. So if I want to control options within here which are currently greyed out, what I would have to do is I'd have to enable this tick box here. So enable the tick box, and that's the /E option within the text editor here. That's what that does for me, and that then enables the O option which is below it. So body fan running at session startup, and so I have two options. One is the fan is running and the other fan is not running. So in this case I'll select body fan running at session start, and then I click on the build icon again, so the binary is actually built for us. And when I come back into the text editor, we can see now that bit 1 is going to be used for enable option, and bit 2 is going to be used for whether that's present or not. And when we examine the hash define which is generated thereafter, we can see we have a 7 which corresponds to bit 1 being set, and also bit 2 being set as well. So far we've had Q for checkbox, we've had O for options, menu options, we've had E which is a conditional header which selects additional options if the checkbox is ticked. So now we're going to move on to actual number entry as well. So if you remember from the voice messaging system, we have the option to enable the voice messaging system. So we have an option also to select whether we want the message to be played during a session start or not played during a session start. And we also have the option to select numerically a message number between 0 and 255. And this is relatively simple, so we just extend what we've done already, and the code would look something like this. So E is a conditional checkbox. In this case, it's going to be the first hash defined or first literal value that we find after the conditional wizard code. So it's basically going to influence this item here. And we have the dot, which represents a bit position. In this case, it's going to be bit position 6. So the E would suggest that we have a conditional checkbox which enables further options, and just like before, in this case we've got option which references bit 7, and this is for the session starts message. So either a message is played at a session start or a message is not played at a session start. But what's different here, of course, is that following that we have the option to enter the message number. So if we want to use a collection of bits and not just a single bit, we use the double dot between two number values. So here I've got O, which means it's an option. Naught is the first parameter that we see after the configurations wizard's selection. The naught references, and then we have 8.15, which represent bit positions 8 to 15 within this constant. We'll have a text string which is displayed on the screen, which is voice message number : 0 to 255. And if we want to provide a range entry for the numbers, we do this by encapsulating the numbers between the less than and greater than options. So in this case I've got less than 0-255. So we can enter a decimal value between the 0 and 255, and these will be inserted into bit position 8 to 15. So what I do is I click on the build icon, I come into the configuration wizard, and this time now we have the voice messaging system present. We have a tick box to enable that. I click on the tick box, I click on the plus icon to expand out the options. Here, just like on the one above, for the body fan I have a choice of 2. So I've got no message played at session start or message played at session start. So in this case we'll enable it, and here I can now enter a number for the message that I want played. So I'll enter a number of 128. If I click on the build icon, then these new items which I've just selected then get encapsulated within the source code. So I'll come back to the text editor, and you can see now there's some numbers have been inserted in here. Okay, so we're almost complete on this module now. The last item which I wanted to show you was the fact that you can actually manipulate some of the numbers which have been entered. So if I just fill in the vibrating mattress options which we have here, very similar to the voice messaging system in so much as that you have kind of header which is tick enabled that then enables some of the other options below it. Here I'm using bits 18 to 25 to represent a number value, and I've got some range checking on the number. It is also possible, for example, if I enter a number of 1 to 5, for this to be represented in the bit positions as say 0 to 4. So I can introduce some maths which you use the hash symbol for. So I'd use hash, which represents the number that's been entered, then followed by the maths which I want. So in this case it would be -1. So this means that I can enter a number between the values of 1 and 5, and whatever I enter will have a value of 1 subtracted on it before it's been stored in the bit position. So you click on save or build in this case, come into the configuration wizards, and open up the vibrating mattress, tick enabled option. So if I put a 1 actually in there and click on build, and then we come back to the text editor, we can see that the 1 is actually represented that bits 18, which are this position here, has actually been represented correctly. If I come back into the configuration wizard, I'll change that to a 2, and then I click on build again and come back into the text editor. You can see now that that value has actually been altered. One thing which you can do also is to provide tooltips for the menus. So if I hit the return key now and insert a tooltip which you use with the I, so it's less than I, greater than, it basically inserts a tooltip. Here I've got a text string which says please enter a value between 1 and 5, and this is obviously a tooltip for the vibrating mattress option. So if I click on build and then come into configuration wizard, I open up the vibrating mattress, and when I hover over the 2, you'll see I get a tooltip which says please enter a value of between 1 and 5. So that's one more feature which is available to you within the scripting language. And that completes the short presentation, so thank you for listening. For UK and Ireland customers, if you need any additional information, please contact myself, David Giles at Hitex UK Ltd, dgiles@hitex.co.uk. Thank you.